If you're not in, you can still get into this. Go to joinpd.com and put in that code. So I'm going to start the class here. Okay, so our learning objectives for today is I want you to know about several theories of moral development, and we're going to be able to compare and contrast them. How are they the same? How are they different? We're going to be doing that on Thursday. I also want you to be aware of the stages of Erikson's psychosocial development and Marcia's extension of that theory. You may have learned about Erikson's theory in other classes because this is something that's very common in psychology classes. Okay. So first I want to go through and debrief a couple of the questions on chapter 2 that more than a couple of you answered incorrectly. So I just want to clarify those. So when it comes to applying Vygotsky's zone of proximal development concept, what includes is the first one here, making new tasks slightly beyond the student's current level of ability. So that's what the zone of proximal development is. It's a space where you can do something that is beyond what you can do by yourself. So you can learn something new because you don't already know it. You're not practicing what you already know. You're going to learn something new. And that's what a zone of proximal development is. Okay, with the support of scaffolding from others. Okay, another one that a few of you got wrong was this. Assimilation takes place when a person uses existing schemas to respond to a new situation. Remember, we came up with many different examples. So assimilation was like when we just got a new chair for a room, we didn't redecorate our whole room. So we use an existing schema or existing room to just add the chair to the room. Just like we can if for study skills, if you already used highlighting and you just added thinking and wondering to the things you noticed, you didn't change the way you study, you just added something to it, that would be assimilation. Whereas if you totally changed the way you study, that would be accommodation. Another question that some of you had trouble with was the role of private speech in Vygotsky's view. And Vygotsky said when we're talking to ourselves, usually it's because we're solving a problem within, so we're thinking about something and we're solving a problem. We might speak out loud or we might speak in our head, but this private speech is usually to solve a problem. And then for this question, according to Piaget, people pass through the 4 stages of cognitive development, and this should be in the same sequence. So although he gives us ages, that's kind of a general guideline where we see those stages, children going through those stages, and they don't grow at the same rate. They don't have the same levels of confidence. It's just that these stages are in the same sequence. You have a child who's 3 go into formal operations before they go into concrete operations. So that same sequence is how children learn, but it might be at different times in their life. Some students might go through it faster than others. And as Vygotsky will say, this is a result of their environment and the opportunities that they have to learn. Okay, so those are the couple of questions that I wanted to go over. If you have any question about those or comments, please let me know. All right, let's go into Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. So what he noticed is that we go through these different stages. So again, just like with Piaget's stages, this isn't cut and dry with the ages, but stage 1 is somewhere around from infant to about 18 months, and stage 2 is about 18 months to 3 years. So you see these ages, and but know that it's not cut and dry. It's not, okay, 19 months, you're in this stage. 3 years, you're in this stage. we can be in between a couple of stages for a while. And the first stage is trust versus mistrust. And this is where infants learn that they can trust those around them. If they don't learn that, then this is where we can have something that isn't developed properly. Your psychosocial development doesn't develop properly if you learn to mistrust the world when you're an infant. And then we go through autonomy versus shame or doubt. And think about it, this is when toddlers are learning there's maybe potty training involved, and they learn to do things themselves, maybe get dressed themselves and, eat themselves. And these are the things that they become autonomous and be able to not be dependent so much on their parents for everything. So we can either, as parents, as teachers, as aunts, uncles, whatever, we can help them go through this autonomy and be proud of them when they try something themselves, or we could shame them when they try something and they spill or they don't go. Of course, when they try something new, they're not always going to be successful the first time. So really, depending on our environment, we can help children get through that stage of psychosocial development, or we can do the opposite and shame them and make them feel ashamed for maybe having an accident when they're potty training or spilling something when they're learning to eat on their own. That's when the shame and the doubt come in. So depending on the environment for each one of these things, the environment around you can help you get through it well, or can really hold you back. So in the third stage, this is the initiative versus guilt stage. And I actually have these slides. I put trust versus mistrust. We just talked about shame versus guilt. So the next one is inferiority and industry versus inferiority. These are when children are in the elementary school age and they're learning to, again, be autonomous, but be able to solve these problems on their own, do their homework on their own, or they're made to feel that they're inferior and they are dependent on their teachers and their parents to help them through everything. And this is where it's important for us as teachers, parents, counselors, coaches, whatever role that we play in their lives, to help them feel proud of what they can do on their own and for them to figure things out on their own, rather than having them feel inferior if they're having some trouble. Give them some help, but don't give them too much help, because they need to feel like they can do things on their own. And if we help children too much, then they go through learned helplessness, and then they feel like they're inferior and they can't do anything on their own. The next stage is identity versus confusion, and this is in the adolescent stage. This is when we go through the who am I, which group do I belong to, what do I believe, and we go through that stage at that time. In early adulthood, we go through this intimacy versus isolation, where we're often looking for a partner, someone to be intimate with, or we might feel isolated and feel like we don't have that and we need that. In the next stage of middle adulthood, we go through this generativity versus stagnation. This is where, in their 40s, people might think, okay, where am I with my life? Am I successful? Did I meet my goals? You start to step back and look at your life and think, am I stuck in where I am? Do I need to do something different to move forward? Or is my life very generative? Am I really progressing through my life the way I want to? That's in middle adult. And then we have late adulthood, where we have integrity, saying I'm proud of the things I did in my life. I'm still vibrant and able to move forward in my life. Or despair, where I'm thinking, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. I wish I would have lived my life differently. That would be despair. So those are the stages of Erikson's psychosocial development. And so there is a video in Edpuzzle that you're going to watch this week that will kind of take what I just went through and reinforce that. It's also in your textbook. So you should have visited this in 3 ways. 1, through my lecture, 2, through watching the video, and 3, through reading the textbook. And in that way that you'd be able to answer questions on a quiz, and more importantly, understand the stages you're going through and understand the stages others are going through, and maybe help others through their stages rather than being that person that can, really get in the way of that stage. Now, Marcia came up with an expansion of Erickson's theory for teens and young adults. So I wanted to share this with you. And then this is a Pear Deck slide. So I want you to write your response after I go through this. Where are you? So when you're a young adult or a teen, you're in these different phases. You're either in the commitment or the exploration phase. There's no right or wrong. They're just things that you go through. If you're in the foreclosure phase, then you're saying, I made a choice without thinking. Maybe you're at school because you were expected, you were going to do this when you get older, and your parents expected of you that you were going to go into a certain field or whatever, and you make that choice and just without even thinking about it, I'm going to do this because this is what's expected of me. That's the foreclosure stage. The identity diffusion stage, you're saying, I don't know, and I don't care what I'm supposed to do with my life. I'm just living my life day to day, and I'm not worried about making plans for my life. That's the identity diffusion stage. There's another stage where you're in the moratorium, where you're saying, I'm thinking about what I should do. So you're actively thinking about what you want to do. You don't know yet, but you're, really thinking about it. And when you're in the identity achievement phase, this is when you thought about it and you know what you want to do with your life and you're moving forward. It doesn't mean that you're not going to maybe change your mind sometime in the future, but you're pretty, solid with, I'm in this. So where are you right now? Are you in the foreclosure stage, identity diffusion, moratorium, or identity achievement? No one's going to see what you said. We're going to look at what people said, but we're not going to see who said what. So go ahead and respond. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's see what 15 of you responded. You have 4 more to respond. So let's see what we said. Okay, a lot of moratorium, identity achievement. Okay, so a lot of you are saying this. You're at the University of Buffalo, you've decided on a major, you're at least thinking about it, or some of you are pretty strong with, this is what I'm going to do. Good. All right. Also in our textbook, this chapter talks about the theory of mind. Now, in Piaget really talks about the theory of mind a little bit too, when he talks about taking the perspective of others. So this little guy is being asked questions by the person sitting across from him and saying, what do you think I see? So seeing if he can understand that she can't see, let's say if there's something behind that mountain and he can see it, does he understand that she can't see it, that the mountain is hiding something that he's seeing? That's being able to think about others and thinking about that they have a different perspective than you. And that's what the theory of mind is. So realizing that others could have different thoughts and feelings than you. So here's an example, when my granddaughter saw my daughter-in-law laying on the couch sad, she went and brought her Band-Aids because she knows when she is sad, it's usually because she has a boo-boo. So she thought that would help her mom. But really understanding other people's thoughts and feelings, that is the theory of mind. Okay, and this goes into what we're going to be talking about next is morality, is realizing what's right and wrong and good or bad, and really based on considering others besides just ourselves. So that's what we're going to get into now, moral development here. And there's 3 different theories that we are going to look at. There's one theory that you may have studied before if you studied psychology, and it's very popular. That's Kohlberg's theories. It's in a lot of the textbooks, but I would like to really focus on some of the other ones first and then get into Kohlberg's theory. So before we start this, we are going to take you're going to take a survey, and you're going to need to know the difference between these three types of choices we make, and know what they are. So a moral judgment is knowing what's right and wrong based on thinking about what's the welfare of the others and what's fair, what's justice. Okay, so you're going to be given scenarios and then tell me whether you think that making that choice is going to be a moral judgment where there is a right or wrong answer that's based on justice or welfare. There's a morally right answer or a morally wrong answer. Or in that scenario, do you look at that and say, that's a social convention, meaning there's a right and wrong, but the right and wrong aren't really based on this deep-seated sense of morality, but more on social or man-made rules. Like, for example, we're supposed to go to church on Sunday because, our religion tells us that we need to go to church on Sunday. That's a man-made rule made by the religion. It's not really morally wrong to not go to church, but it's socially inappropriate if you belong to that religion. So that would be a social convention where there's right and wrong. Maybe your parents or school or your religion taught you something was right or wrong. And it may be because it is moral, so religions do tell us not to kill. That would be a moral judgment, but there's other social convention rules. And then sometimes we have to make a choice, and there really isn't any right or wrong. It's just your choice. It's a personal choice. It's not hurting anybody else. And I can choose this or I can choose that. That would be a personal choice. So what I'd like you to do is go to Google Classroom now and open up. In week 6, you'll see morality of your decisions. And this is what it looks like. So you'll put your name, and then you're going to read the scenario and then decide, is this a moral judgment? Is this a social convention? Or is this a personal choice? And complete the whole thing. You have different sections. You have a section here, rules of the road. You have roommate morality, rules of the road. You have school rules, and you have moral issues in society. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes, and after that, I'll find out if you need more time. Don't overthink these. Read it and go with your first instinct, moral, social, or personal. Then go on and read the next one. Does anybody have any questions before we go off and do this? Okay, let's come back together. I wanted you to do that first because we're going to talk in more detail about these three things and what they mean. But we're going to then use the data that we just collected from that survey. There were no right or wrong answers to this. It wasn't a quiz. It's just a matter of what do you think for each of these. And I want you to realize something, and I think you will as we go through looking at some of the responses of your classmates. So I have this question for you. Do you think moral behavior is learned, or is it inherent? Are we born knowing right from wrong, or is it something we learn? What do you think? So many of you thought that we learn moral behavior, and we do learn moral behavior, but there is some part of us, there's some intuition there that really kind of tells us that something is good or bad, or right or wrong, or fair or unfair. You kind of feel it in your gut. So we do have a kind of an intuition in addition to that what we learn about what is right and wrong. So here's just an example of social conventions that is the reasoning part. So you have your intuition, what you're born with, but then there's reasoning that we learn from the social conventions around us. So let's talk about swearing. Swearing is not inherently morally wrong. It's more of a social convention that we shouldn't say certain words. So here's my grandson when he was a little bitty thing, maybe about 3 years old. And my stepson brought him into the car dealership with him, and they were getting their car cleaned. And here he comes, pipes up this little bitty thing that says, "It smells like shit." And it was surprising to the card salesman because you don't expect this little peanut to be swearing. It's inappropriate for little children to swear. It's inappropriate for us to swear in certain situations. In other, it's perfectly appropriate. And that's where reasoning comes in. And it's the social convention that teach us that this is wrong. But it doesn't hit us in the gut as inherently wrong because we're not harming anyone. It's just a matter of it's not socially appropriate. So Nucci has this 3 parts to his theory of moral development. And one is this justice. And this is the intuition, the gut part of us that just says, oh, it's not fair. When someone gets more than us or someone is treated differently than us, we have this feeling like it's not fair because this is distributive justice. It's not fair. Someone gets something that others don't get. And we have this inherent feeling like that we all deserve to get the same thing. The same thing happens when we see someone being harmed, like being bullied or whether. We get this gut feeling that it's wrong. We feel that it's wrong. We feel that, that it shouldn't be happening. And this isn't something, yes, we can be taught this, but we can actually feel it when we see someone being mean to someone else. Now, we also have the social conventions, things that we learn from our society. And in stage 1 of social conventions, we call that moral realism. And it's usually around up to age 8. So here's Gracie when she was little, and she believes rules are rules. So rules are absolute. If you play a game and these are the rules, you can't change them. If the teacher says there's certain rules, then you can't have a different rule. This is the rule. They're absolute. But when you get a little bit older, over the age of 8, you start to realize that rules are really man-made and they can be changeable, and that they're made for the benefit of society. So in general, let's just talk about dress code. Dress codes in a school. There's a reason for that so that classrooms won't be disrupted by clothing. And so there is a reason for that dress code. So it's right and wrong because the society says it, the group says it, the school says that. But this is man-made and it can be changeable. So that's stage 2 of the social conventions. Now, there's also a third choice, and that is personal choice. In a personal choice, there isn't right and wrong in that because no one is really getting hurt. It's not a moral decision. But some people think of it as a moral decision, but it's really just a personal choice. So, and in a personal choice, it's not hurting anyone for you to choose chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream. It's your personal choice. But some people will make you believe that you should have their choice and not your choice. So I want you to watch this video. I'll put the link in it for you. And then think about, how does this relate to personal choice? Cynthia, what were you talking about in your room?
We talked about how it's related to personal choice because the kid can choose whether he wants to believe the teacher or not and to like have the same mindset after a while.
Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
good. That makes sense. How about Bosco? What did your room talk about?
I remember talked about how this was related to personal choice, because the student, he just wanted to paint the flowers with a certain color, but in one school he was told by the teacher to do what he wanted, but the other school, the other teacher was really nice and allowed him to use his creativity to choose. So there was
Sure.
really not a matter of right and wrong. It was, just personal preference, I guess.
Yeah, it's perfectly what harm does it do others to color my flowers whatever color I want, right? It doesn't hurt anyone. So it's a personal choice. Good. All right, let's go on to the next thing. So another part, here's another Example here is in personal choice when let's say you're building with Legos. When you're building with Legos, there's directions, but you don't have to follow the directions. Someone who is in the first stage of social conventions might say, oh, there's directions, we have to follow the directions. But realizing that this is a choice, you can follow the directions, but you don't have to. You can be creative and just build something with the Legos. This is a personal choice. And understanding the difference between something that's right or wrong, the social convention, or something that's a personal choice is part of our moral development. Sometimes I guess I judge a little bit when I look at teachers, parents, whatever, that are trying to tell their child how to play with blocks or how to do this. Maybe showing them that here's one way you could do it, but to really have it open and let children make their own choices, especially when they're playing, and maybe give them choices as well in other parts of their life. Would you like this or would you like this? Do you want to wear this outfit or this outfit? You don't have to give them total choice, but you can give them some choice. And here's where, realizing that personal choice, there's no right or wrong. Whatever you choose is okay. It's not hurting anyone if you build with the blocks this way rather than following the rules or the directions. So now let's think about what you answered in your surveys. So here's this isn't just your survey, but I've been doing this for several years. So you see the responses of like a couple hundred people here, and you're in there. So here was the question: if you're a guidance counselor and you see someone being bullied in the hallway, should you interfere or walk by? Now, 65% of you said that this was a moral judgment, and 32%, so about, 32% said that this is a social convention, that guidance counselors in the social situation, they need to step in or they need to interfere or whatever. It's their job. So it would be a social convention. And then a few people said it's a personal choice. Whereas look at what you said about students, that if a student sees someone being bullied, then 72% said this is a moral judgment. It's wrong for students to be bullied. And only 19% were saying, it's a social convention that you should interfere or walk by, whether it's, socially acceptable or not socially acceptable in that school, say, to step in. And then 8.2% of you said it's your personal choice whether you walk by or interfere. So you can see here that there is no right or wrong answer. And I want you to see that we have different points of view. So it's not like there's only one right answer to this, but understand that other people are seeing it differently than you. So 65% of you saw this as a moral judgment. And here, 72% of you thought this is a moral judgment. So it's this inherent feeling of someone's being bullied and this is wrong. But others of you looked at this and said, so a big chunk of you, 32% here and 19% here, said, it wasn't so much a morally in your gut, this is wrong, but more of a social convention, whether this is socially acceptable to be bullied or not, or whether it's socially acceptable to interfere or not. And even with this situation, some people thought, no, this is just a personal choice. You have a choice to interfere with a bully or not. You have a choice to be a bully or not. And this isn't a moral kind of situation. So I'm going to put you back in your breakout rooms, and I want you to talk about this for a couple of minutes. What do you think about the difference between these two? And what do you think about people thinking something differently than you were thinking them? Okay, so I'm sending you off for a couple of minutes. Okay, waiting for just a couple more people to join us, but I'd like to hear from Haley. What were you talking about in your room in relation to this?
We talked about how all of us kind of said the question about the guidance counselor is more like a social convention because like their job, they're kind of required to like step in that situation. Whereas
Mhm.
like the student is more of like a moral judgment on like whether or not they want to get into that situation.
Okay, that makes sense. Olivia, do you have anything else to add to what they were saying?
We had talked about like regardless of our answers that both people, like the guidance counselor and the student, should step in that situation.
Okay. All right. So you're feeling like this is a moral judgment, that this is wrong, something should be done. That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And do you see how we all don't agree with each other here? And that's okay, because here's the problem with moral decisions, that it's not cut and dry. We all don't think the same way. But sometimes, remember, the theory of mind is we think others think like us. So we have to realize, and that's the purpose for this exercise, is realizing that other people are not necessarily thinking like us, and being tolerant to know that maybe someone's making a decision because they're thinking about it in a different way. So let's look at another one here. In this one, did you predict your classmates would have the same answer as you? This one is, you're in the left lane and need to turn right. You're driving. Should you cut in front of the car in the right lane to make your turn, or just keep going and then turn around up ahead? What kind of a decision is this? Is this a moral judgment? Is it morally wrong to cut in front of someone? Is it a social convention that you probably shouldn't cut in front of someone? Or is this just a personal choice that's not hurting anyone one way or another? So this is what you thought, and this is what your classmates thought. So you see there's a little bit of a difference here, not too much of a difference. But I'm going to send you off again to your breakout rooms. What did you predict? And then, why do you think your classmates would say something the same or say something different from what you said? So off you go. Okay, I'd like to hear from a couple more of you about this. You can see that this is almost, it's pretty split here. And so there's not a lot of agreement of what this is. So Emma, what were you talking about in your room?
We kind of talked about how we think like moral and personal judgment kind of go hand to hand. And we honestly we all kind of did personal choice for this, as we feel like when it comes to driving, like it's your personal choice of like if you want to do it or not. Like, yeah, it might not be wrong, but we think it's like your personal choice, like at the end of the day.
Okay.
So that's kind of
Okay, good. All right, let me hear from Josie. What was your room talking about?
So my room is pretty much like kind of split. Some of us believed it was like more of a social convention because you think of like driving and the rules of the road. A couple other people we kind of thought of like more of personal choice because when you really think about it, like it seems like when you read the prompts, you automatically think of laws, like driving laws, but the prompt doesn't really say anything that's illegal or anything that's really morally wrong. It's kind of your choice whether you want to cut someone off or not. Like, it doesn't really necessarily make you a bad person because who knows, you could be going to the hospital to save somebody's life.
Okay. All right. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Let's just hear from one more room that we haven't heard from yet. Quinn, what was your room talking about?
So we said that it was like a social convention
Okay.
because like like it's not really like you could get pulled over for it and it's not like even though it's like a personal I don't know I was kind of in between both personal and social because
Uh-huh.
like you could choose to do it or not to do it, but it's also like kind of like social because you could like if a cop saw you do it, he could pull you over.
Yeah. Well, and think about this. How's the other person going to feel if you cut them off? When you're thinking about others and their feelings, that's when morality comes into this. The morality of hey, yes, I could cut someone off because I need to get over there and it doesn't matter. I don't care about this person next to me. I'm just going to ignore them and do what I need to do. And so what happens though, if you're that other person and someone cuts you off, you feel angry because you think it wasn't right for them to cut you off because they were inconsiderate of you. So that would be either a moral decision, or a social convention, like it's not acceptable to cut people off. But see, in some societies, it is okay, and others it isn't. When I went, I'm down here in Florida, people cut each other off all the time. When I'm up in Buffalo, it happens less often, and it's more obvious if someone cuts you off and for people to get angry about it. But down here, people do it all the time. So that would be more of a social convention in that way. So you can see that there isn't just one right answer for this, but understand if someone cuts you off and you're angry, maybe they're in the situation where it was my choice. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just had that choice. So, and realizing that can help maybe assuage some arguments. All right, so we talked about Nochi's theory. I want just a couple of slides more about Haidt's theory. This is Haidt, pronounced hate. And his theory was that we have this continuum. So we have this intuition. We feel that this is wrong. And then we also have our reasoning, and we say it's wrong because, and we have a reason for it. So feeling it is wrong, opposed to thinking it is wrong. So when making a judgment, we're all different. We're not the same. Some of us are more feelers and some of us more thinker. Where are you on this continuum? When making a judgment, do you feel it first? Someone cuts you off. Do you feel it's wrong, or do you think it's wrong? Where are you on this? So put your dot where you are, and let's see where the class is. Just drag your dot. You have a dot, drag it onto one of those lines. Okay, see where we are all over the place. Some are high thinkers, some are high feelers, and we got a bunch in between. Okay, so now you know, right within our class, this small group, we're all over the place. So when we're making a judgment and we're feeling strongly this was wrong, why don't you feel it's wrong too? Because maybe they're high thinkers and they're not thinking it's wrong, or somewhere in between. We're all different. So and Haidt talks about moral development, he says that we have an intuition and we can feel like something is wrong. We have the feeling brain that thinks. So we start with this intuition kind of thing, but actually reasoning can help us change our mind about what's right and wrong. And we start with this intuition, but because of reasoning, we can move into thinking something different and going past our intuition. And that is through conversation, through experience, through socialization. We can then change what we thought was wrong and maybe change our mind. So here's an example of you want to use a song for a video you're making for social media, and you don't have copyrights to use it. Should you put it in your video? Okay, and about 54% of you said this is a social convention. Depending on your society, it might be right or wrong. Some said this is just morally wrong, and some said it's your personal choice. So last time, sending off to your room, what did you think about this? So just a minute, because it's almost time to go. All right, so in this situation here, one of the things that I taught when I was a technology integrator is to let students know the rules and the laws, because this is actually in our country, this is against the law. So you could get sued, and it is against the law. If you're a teacher and you do this, you could actually lose your job. So there are copyright laws, but if you're in another country, there might not be the same laws, and this would be okay. And certain situations, you know, certain social conventions, we might say, you know, all my friends are doing it. We can see that other people are doing it. You might talk about the laws of YouTube, and they'll take your video down if you don't follow copyright. And others might say, hey, this is a moral judgment because, hey, look, someone else owns that song. They deserve to get paid for that song. I don't have the right to use their work without paying. And others think, oh, this is my choice. I can use it or not. So that's for this week. For today, on Thursday, we're going to continue with a little bit more with Haig's theory, talk about Kohlberg's theory, and then we're going to do an activity together in a group. In a small group, you're going to be comparing and contrasting those three theories. So please come on Thursday because it's going to be a lot easier for you to do this if you're working in a group than if you do it on your own. It'll be more work for you if you're not here doing it in class. So I hope I see all of you on Thursday. Have a wonderful day. And stay with me if you have a question.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.